I need to say something before I touch this envelope, and I need you to hear it carefully, because it is the reason this video is different from everything else you have already seen today. I know how many of these you receive. I know that by the time most people find a video like this one, they have already watched 2 or 3 others this morning. Divine letters, prophetic words, angelic messages, heaven speaking. They are everywhere, every day, and most of them begin the same way, with someone telling you that God has a special word just for you, that angels are moving on your behalf, that your breakthrough is coming. I have seen hundreds of them. You have too. I am not going to tell you that those words are false. I am not qualified to say that. But I am going to show you something. Read that right there on the seal. Those words were there when this arrived. This is not a video I found online. This is not a message generated and posted on a schedule. This envelope was physically delivered. It sat on my table for weeks, sealed, with that instruction written on it. And inside this envelope is a USB drive containing a letter. Not a caption template, not a script recycled from last month. A letter, written for a specific appointed day, with photographs printed and sealed inside, with prediction cards handwritten and folded inside, with things placed in here that are meant to be shown to you at specific moments in the reading, because the one who sent this knew that words alone would not be enough. That is what makes this different, not the words, the format, the intention behind it, the fact that someone or something went to the trouble of doing this. I have been waiting weeks to open this. I prayed this morning before I touched it. And when I sat down at this table just before we started recording, I noticed something. My hands were not entirely steady, because even I do not know everything that is inside here. I know what the letter says. I have read it. But I do not know which part of it is going to land on you today in the way that it landed on me when I first read it. And I believe something specific is in here for you. So here is what I am asking. Before you decide whether to keep watching, I want you to do one thing. Look at your day right now. Think about what you are carrying. Think about the thing that has been sitting on you for weeks or months or years that you have not been able to set down. Whatever that thing is, I want you to hold it in your mind for the next few seconds. The person who wrote what is on this USB drive knew about that thing. Before you pressed play today, they knew, and they wrote directly into it. Now watch what I am about to open. The old way, because some things deserve to be entered carefully. This drive contains the letter. I am going to play it now as you read along. I will only pause it when I need to show you something from inside this envelope, a photograph, or a prediction card that was physically printed and placed in here for this exact moment in the letter. Everything else you read on that screen, and I want you to read every single word. Do not skim. Do not skip ahead, because the part that is written for you specifically, you will only recognize it if you do not rush past it. Do not go anywhere.
Stop. Do not move forward. Do not scroll. Do not look away from what is unfolding inside your chest at this very second. Close your eyes for just a moment, not long, just long enough to do what I'm about to command you to do. Imagine a hall so vast that its ceiling disappears into light rather than ending at any visible point. Imagine walls that are not made of any material found in this earth. Walls constructed from compressed sound, from accumulated prayers, from the residue of every conversation that has ever taken place between the divine and the human. Imagine that in this hall, names are spoken, one at a time, with full weight, with complete attention. The way a mother speaks the name of a child she has not seen in years. The way a judge speaks a verdict that changes everything. The way a physician speaks a prognosis that shifts the entire landscape of a life. Today, in that hall, your name was spoken. I want you to stop. Right now. Sit with the specific reality of that before I go any further. Because what I am about to tell you in this letter will only carry its full weight if you allow that single fact to settle into the deepest part of your understanding. Your name was spoken in that hall today, not last year, when the crisis was at its worst, not a decade ago, when your faith was perhaps more vibrant or your life more ordered. Today, in the specific conditions of your life as they exist at this moment, with all of the complexity, the unresolved questions, and the quiet griefs that only you fully know the dimensions of. In the middle of all of that, a hall that exists beyond the reach of time, and outside, the boundaries of the physical world turned its full attention toward you and spoke your name. I am Michael. I was the one standing in the hall when it happened. I heard the resonance of your name in that space, and I received my instructions. And my instructions were unambiguous. Go to her. Go today. Deliver the message that has been held in preparation for this exact convergence of her readiness and heaven's timing. Do not wait for a more convenient moment, because there is no more convenient moment. There is only this moment, this precise intersection of your life and heaven's intention for it. And what happens in this intersection will determine the character of everything that follows. You need to understand something about why today specifically carries this designation. Time, from the perspective of eternity, does not operate the way your clocks and calendars suggest it does. But there are appointed moments. There are specific convergences that are written into the fabric of a person's story before that story begins. Junctures where the preparation occurring beneath the surface of an ordinary life meets the release point, and what was invisible suddenly becomes not only visible, but undeniable. Today is your convergence point. This is the juncture in your story, and I was dispatched to make certain you did not miss it without knowing what it was. Write the word present in the comments if you are ready to receive what today was sent to bring you. Stay with this letter. What comes next in section 2 is the part that explains why your waiting was not a mistake. It is the part most people need to read twice.
Before we go any further into this letter, Michael placed something in this envelope that he wanted you to see at this exact moment. A picture of the hall where your name was spoken, where this all began. I want you to look at this carefully. This is where today started for you.
Hear this. There is a calculation that heaven performs over the life of every person it is assigned a significant purpose to. It is not a calculation of merit or of worthiness, because those categories do not function the way human systems of reward and consequence have trained you to understand them. The calculation heaven performs is one of readiness. And readiness is not a spiritual achievement. It is the completion of a process. And the process, once begun, runs according to its own internal logic with a precision that cannot be hurried by urgency or desperation, and cannot be delayed by the opposition of forces that would prefer it never reach completion. Let me translate that into the language of your actual experience. Every year that passed in what felt like stagnation, every season where the dream seemed to recede rather than advance, every stretch of time where you looked at the distance between where you were and where you knew you were supposed to be, and felt the particular kind of despair that comes from effort without visible result. Every single one of those periods was not wasted time in the celestial calculation. It was investment time. It was the time during which the depth of your roots was being established below the level at which any human observer could measure them, including you. Understand this about the nature of roots. The oldest and most powerful trees in your world, the ones that have stood through centuries of storms without toppling, the ones whose presence seems almost supernatural in its permanence. Those trees did not look like what they became when they were young. In their first years, the overwhelming majority of their growth was entirely underground, completely invisible. If you had stood beside one of those trees in its early seasons and measured only what was visible above the ground, you would have concluded that very little was happening. You would have been wrong in the most absolute way possible. Because underground, a network was forming that would eventually grip an area of earth so vast and so deep that no wind in any natural storm would be able to dislodge it. That network is what has been forming in you during every season that appeared, from the outside to be barely growing. Every year you persisted when logic said, stop. Every month you maintained your integrity when compromise would have been so much easier. Every day you chose to keep praying into what felt like an empty sky. Each of those choices was another root extending deeper, another connection forming in the underground network of a strength that was not yet visible, but was becoming increasingly immovable. The calculation is complete. Today, the tree stands up, and when the world around you sees what has emerged, they will not be able to account for it using only what they observed above the surface of your life, because what stands before them will be the product of an invisible preparation that required exactly as long as it took, not one season less, not one season more. Exactly this long.
The letter just sent you something to hold on to. Every word on this card was placed here specifically for this moment. Read it. Let it land.
Receive this reframing today. It will require something of you. It will require a willingness to look back at the years of waiting, of obscurity, of prayers that seemed to dissolve unanswered, and to see them from an angle you have never been shown before. Not from the angle of what you lacked during those years, but from the angle of what those years were protecting. There are 3 things that the long season of hiddenness preserved in you that would not have survived an early and premature exposure to the life you were designed to carry. The first thing your silence protected was your motivation. when extraordinary things begin to happen in the life of a person who has not yet been forged in the furnace of sustained obscurity. The applause, the recognition, the influence tend to become their own reward. The true and meaningful work of serving others and advancing something of genuine eternal value begins to compete with the maintenance of the status that the work produced. And over time, subtly and almost imperceptibly, the motivation shifts. The person is no longer doing the work for the reason it was originally done. They are doing it to protect what the work gave them. And the purity of their contribution is eroded from within, in a way that often cannot be seen until the damage is already extensive. You were protected from that corruption by the very seasons you mourned. A person who has served faithfully in obscurity, who has given without recognition, who has prayed and loved and sacrificed without a spotlight ever touching what they were doing. That person has been purified of the hunger for applause in a way that no spiritual discipline alone could accomplish. Their motivation is clean. When they step into visibility, they carry a purity of purpose that cannot be manufactured, because it was forged in the only furnace hot enough to produce it. The furnace of doing good when no one was watching. The second thing your silence protected was your discernment. There is a specific kind of wisdom that only develops in people who have had to navigate long stretches of life without the validation of visible results, without the reassurance of others' opinions, without the safety net of a community that confirmed their direction at every turn. It is the wisdom of a person who has learned to hear, very precisely, the difference between the voice of truth and the voice of fear, who has developed, through necessity, an interior compass that functions even in conditions of complete exterior ambiguity. That compass is an extraordinary gift, and it was given to you through the very conditions you endured to receive it. The third thing your silence protected was your compassion, specifically your capacity to sit with those who are suffering without rushing to resolve their pain, without the subtle condescension of someone who has never truly been in the dark themselves. The people you will walk alongside in the season that begins today will need someone who has been where they are. Who knows? Not from theology, but from the body's actual memory of sitting in genuine darkness, what it costs to keep believing. You know that because you lived it. Your silence was not punishment. It was preparation. It was protection. And it was the most tender form of love a wise guardian can offer to someone being prepared for an assignment that requires the depth that only forms in the quiet. Do not close this letter yet. The next section names something you have carried silently your entire life and never had language for. Read it.
Michael included this image in the envelope because he knew that some of you needed to see what faithful hidden women look like, not from a distance, up close, where no one is watching, where the real work is done. Look at her. This is you. This is your lineage. She never stopped, and neither did you.
You are still with me, and I command your full attention now. Because what I want to speak into in this section of the letter has been a source of hidden grief for you. A grief that you may not have named because you did not have the language for it. It is the grief of a woman who suspected from early in her life that she carried something significant and unusual, and then spent decades watching that suspicion, apparently disproved by the ordinariness of what her life seemed to consist of. Every woman watching this today who ever felt the quiet ache of unrealized potential, who ever lay awake wondering whether the sense of destiny she carried was a divine truth or a personal delusion. This section of the letter is for you, specifically. There is a lineage in the celestial record that is not tracked by the metrics of human achievement. It does not appear on bestseller lists, in documented histories of institutions, or on the walls of any building that bears a famous name. It is the lineage of ordinary women whose lives were the hidden infrastructure of every significant thing that happened in the world around them. The women whose prayers, prayed in kitchens and on buses and in hospital waiting rooms and in the parking lots of grocery stores, were the unseen force that redirected situations, softened hearts, opened doors, and held families together through circumstances that should have destroyed them. The women whose faithfulness, unrewarded and largely unnoticed, was the ground from which the visible achievements of those around them grew. This lineage has never been properly celebrated by the world that benefited from it, but it has been celebrated in the only hall that ultimately matters. And today, in the same hall where your name was spoken, the names of the women who came before you in this lineage were spoken alongside yours, not as a record of what they lacked, but as the testimony of what they built. And what they built over centuries of faithful and ordinary lives was the foundation of the authority that is being released to you today. Think for a moment about the women in your own history who carried this quality. Your grandmother, perhaps, who moved through life with a quiet dignity that attracted the respect of everyone around her without her ever demanding it. Your mother, or a woman who functioned as a mother to you, whose practical love, shown in 10,000 small acts over decades, was the sustaining force of an entire household, an entire community. The woman in your church or your neighborhood who was never the one at the front of the room, but whose presence somehow stabilized every situation she entered. You knew this kind of woman. You have been this kind of woman. And the ache of unrealized potential that you have carried was not a sign that you failed to become what you were meant to be. It was the pressure of a greatness that had not yet found its season of full expression. That season is here, today. And I want you to understand that what is being released into your life is not a departure from the lineage you carry. It is the culmination of it. The women who prayed before you, who gave before you, who endured before you, did not do so that their stories would remain hidden forever. They did so that when their daughter, their granddaughter, their spiritual heir came to the appointed moment of her own story, she would step into it, carrying the accumulated weight of everything they had sown. You are that heir. And today, the inheritance arrives.
There are women in your family line who earned what is written on this card, and today it passes to you. Do not look away from this.
I want to speak to your body for a moment, not to your beliefs, not to your history, not to your spiritual life in the abstract, but to the physical body you inhabit, because what is happening today is not only a spiritual event, it is an event with physical dimensions that you may already be beginning to notice. There is a warmth in your chest right now that has not left since the beginning of this letter. I know it is there because it is one of the consistent signs that people who receive these transmissions describe afterward. It is not produced by emotional stimulation alone. It is the physical correlate of a spiritual activation, the body's recognition of something the mind is still processing. Pay careful attention to it rather than dismissing it, because the body, in its ancient wisdom, often registers truth before the analytical mind allows it. That deeper part of you, the one beneath all, the layers of conditioning and accumulated disappointment, recognized this letter before your conscious mind had read enough to form an opinion. That recognition is trustworthy. The part of you that lives beneath your history does not manufacture false signals. When it stirs, something real has arrived. Today, a process of restoration is being initiated that works from the inside outward. The visible changes that become apparent in the coming weeks will have their origin in what is happening right now, in the deepest layers of who you are. They will express themselves first as a quality of light in your eyes that was not there before, as a steadiness that does not depend on your circumstances for its foundation. The restoration of your body, your energy, your capacity for joy and presence, all of it flows downstream from what is being initiated today. Receive it without qualification, without hesitation. If the honest answer to, "Does this feel true?" is yes, then let it simply be yes.
This is what the letter is describing. What it looks like when heaven moves through a human being. Michael included this so you could see it as more than words. This is happening to you right now as you watch this. Don't rush past this one.
Listen carefully. There is a legal dimension to the spiritual reality that governs your life, and I want to speak to it directly because it addresses something that has been a source of profound confusion and frustration for you. The confusion arises from the gap between what you were promised and what you observed, between the declarations of provision and protection your faith tradition made over you, and the actual conditions of your life that seemed to contradict those declarations repeatedly and without apparent reason. Here is what you were not told, or perhaps were told, but in language too abstract to truly connect with your experience. The promises that belong to your life did not enter an uncontested environment when they were spoken over you. They entered a contested one, and what you experienced as the failure of those promises was not a failure at all. It was the experience of a legal battle being conducted on your behalf, in a court whose proceedings were invisible to you, but whose decisions affect every dimension of your visible life. In this court, evidence is submitted. Cases are argued. The opposition to your flourishing did not simply accept the promises spoken over your life and withdraw. It brought a counter-argument. It presented the record of your failures, your doubts, your moments of compromise, your seasons of bitterness and distance from the source of your strength. And it argued that those failures disqualified you from the inheritance designated for you. And the case went on. For years, perhaps for decades, it went on. But there is something the opposition did not account for. The advocate who stood on your behalf in that court was not arguing the case of your perfection. That argument would have been easily defeated. The advocate was arguing the case of a covenant that does not operate on the basis of merit, a covenant established not by your worthiness, but by the faithfulness of the one who made the promise. And that argument has no counter-argument, because the covenant is not contingent on you. It is contingent on the one who established it, and the one who established it does not break what was sealed. Today, a verdict was delivered. Today, the gavel came down on the side of the covenant. Today, the accumulated evidence of the opposition's case was declared insufficient to overturn the decree that was written before the case even began. Every claim the opposition has been pressing against your life, the claim that your suffering was your sentence, the claim that your lack was your inheritance, the claim that your obscurity was your permanent address, every one of those claims has been legally and irrevocably dismissed. The verdict is in, and the verdict says everything that was promised is still yours. Everything that was delayed is now released. Everything held in the contested space of the ongoing case is now cleared for distribution into your life. You won. Not because you were perfect, because the covenant held. What follows section 6 is the 4 signs. Read all 4. At least one of them will describe something about yourself that you have never seen written down before. That recognition is not coincidence. Stay for it.
The letter just delivered a verdict. I want you to see it written. Read every word on this card. Say it out loud if you can.
There are specific patterns in the lives of people heaven has designated for significant purpose, patterns consistent enough across different lives and different circumstances that they function almost as a signature, the way a master craftsman signs the work they intend to be remembered by. I want to describe these patterns to you now, because as I do, you will experience the particular quality of recognition that comes from having something true about yourself reflected back to you for the first time in language that matches your actual experience. The first sign is sensitivity, not the fragility sometimes mistakenly attached to that word, but a depth of perception that registers subtleties in people, in situations, in environments, that the majority of those around you entirely miss. You have always known things about people before those people told you. You have always sensed the emotional weather of a room the moment you entered it. That weight of awareness has sometimes felt like a burden. It is also a gift, a specialized form of perception designed into you for the specific purpose of navigating the complex relational terrain of the work you were assigned to do. The second sign is the targeted nature of your suffering, the specific way your losses so often occurred, precisely when breakthrough seemed closest, the relentless precision with which opposition struck the areas of your life most essential to your purpose. That precision is itself evidence. Random misfortune does not operate with that kind of focus. What you experienced was targeted, which means the force directing it recognized the threat you represented. What you are and what you carry has been known and taken seriously by the realm that opposes it, even in seasons when you yourself were uncertain of your own significance. The third sign is the longing that will not be quieted by ordinary things. Social status, accumulation of possessions, comfortable routines that make the weeks pass pleasantly. None of these have ever been enough to silence what persists in you. That longing is not spiritual restlessness. It is the call of your assignment, maintaining its frequency through the longest silences, refusing to let you settle permanently below the level of what you were made for. The fourth sign is the persistence of your faith. Through seasons when it had no earthly foundation, you maintained it, not because your circumstances justified it, but because something in you could not finally release it, even when releasing it would have made rational sense. That particular quality of faith, the kind that survives its own dismantling and comes back, and comes back, and comes back, is the kind of faith heaven specifically builds into the people it intends to use most profoundly. These are your signs. Do you recognize them?
This image was placed in the envelope after the 4 signs were written. I believe Michael wanted you to see what it looks like when a person finally recognizes who they actually are. Look at what recognition does to a person. Look at what it does to their posture, their expression, their presence. This is what is beginning to happen to you right now. This is available to you today.
You have stayed, and I want to acknowledge that directly, because at this exact point in most letters, most people have already moved on. They received enough to feel something, and they left. But you are still here, which means what I am about to say in this section is specifically for the kind of person who does not leave. Read carefully. This section is the one that reframes everything that happened before today. Give it your complete attention. I want to revisit your suffering, not to extend your relationship with the pain of it, but to show you a map you have never seen before. A map that takes the specific topography of what you have endured and reveals the geography of what you are being prepared to inhabit. Hear this principle. The most fertile land on earth is almost always land that has been broken. The great plains that feed nations were not always flat and open and hospitable to growth. They were broken by glaciers, by floods, by the slow and patient movement of forces too large to be perceived in a single lifetime, and that breaking created the conditions for an abundance that unbroken land could never have produced. The very ruptures that seemed destructive were the mechanism by which the land was opened to receive exactly what was needed to make it extraordinarily generative. Your suffering follows this pattern precisely. The specific nature of the relational pain you have carried, the betrayals, the abandonments, the loves that did not hold, and the communities that did not sustain, did not merely wound you. It broke you. Open in the exact places that needed to be broken. Open to create room for the kind of love you are now equipped to give and to receive. The places that hurt the most are the places that are now most open, most receptive, most capable of a depth of connection that the protected and unbroken heart simply cannot access. The financial hardships you have navigated, the losses, the periods of genuine material lack, the humiliation of need in a world that equates financial standing with personal worth. These did not merely humble you, though they did that. They taught you something that prosperity alone is constitutionally incapable of teaching. They taught you the precise difference between provision that originates in human systems and provision that originates in a source beyond those systems. They taught you where security actually lives, and that lesson, learned in the body, as only suffering teaches lessons in the body, will function in the coming season as a compass that guides you unfailingly toward genuine stability and away from the false versions that collapse under pressure. The health challenges you have faced, the seasons of physical limitation, pain, and uncertainty, these carved in you a compassion for bodily suffering that a person who has never been ill cannot fully access. They gave you the vocabulary of vulnerability, the intimate understanding of what it means to need care, to be unable to provide for yourself, to have your own body become a source of fear rather than confidence. That vocabulary, that intimate and embodied understanding, will be the language in which you speak most powerfully to those who are currently inside the experiences you have already lived through. Even the specific grief of unanswered prayer, the years of bringing the same requests to heaven and receiving silence, even that has been mapped to a purpose. Because the woman who knows how to maintain her faith in the silence is the woman who can sit with another woman in her silence and say, without hollowness, without the false brightness of someone offering reassurance they have never needed themselves, I know this darkness. I have been here, and I can tell you with the certainty of someone who came through it that your silence is not abandonment. It is preparation. Every topographic feature of your suffering corresponds to a terrain in your purpose. The map is complete, and today you receive it.
I want you to take a full breath before you read what Michael wrote on this card, because this is the sentence that reframes everything you went through, every single thing. Read it slowly.
I want to speak now about something specific and practical, because faith that cannot touch the material world is incomplete, and today's transmission was not sent to remain in the realm of beautiful ideas. It was sent to alter the conditions of your actual lived daily experience, including the financial ones. Heaven operates an economy. I recognize that statement may sound strange to ears that have been trained to separate the spiritual from the material, to treat money and provision as concerns too earthly for divine engagement. But this separation is a relatively recent invention of religious culture, not a feature of the faith practiced by the women of the ancient world who are your spiritual ancestors. Those women prayed with complete and unself-conscious specificity about olive harvests and grain stores, and the price they would receive at market, and whether the rain would come in time to save what was planted. They understood, in their bones, that the God who numbers the hairs on a head is not indifferent to the number in a bank account. In heaven's economy, every act of faithfulness generates a credit. Every day you gave from genuine lack. Every season you continued to serve when the rational calculation said you had nothing left to spare. Every act of sacrifice, witnessed or entirely private, these deposited into an account held on your behalf and accumulating interest at a rate that exceeds any instrument this world has ever produced. Today, heaven opens the ledger, and the balance is not what you imagined. It is larger. The compound interest of faithfulness, applied across the full span of your investment, produced a surplus that exceeds what your conscious accounting of what you gave could have predicted. Every seed sown in faith is not returned as one seed. It is returned as a harvest. And harvests that are replanted do not ADD. They multiply. The number in that account will express itself in your material life with a specificity and an abundance that will require you to expand your vocabulary for what is possible. I want to be clear about what I am not saying, because there is a distortion of this truth that does the people who carry it more harm than good. I am not saying that financial provision is the primary measure of divine favor. I am not saying that the size of your blessing is proportional to your spiritual advancement. What I am saying is specific to you, to your account, to the balance established by the specific actions of your specific life over the specific years you have lived. Your harvest is due, not as a reward for behavior, as the completion of a cycle that was set in motion the first time you planted in faith and waited in trust for the return. The cycle is completing today, and what is returning to you is large enough to address not only your present needs, but the needs that the assignment ahead of you will generate, and the legacy that you intend to leave for those who come after you. Receive it without apology. Receive it without the diminishment that is sometimes dressed up as humility. Receive it as a daughter who is inheriting what was always meant to be hers. Before you reach the next section, pause for one moment, because section 10 is the one that Michael specifically asked to be included in this letter. It is written for the women who lost someone. If that is not you, it will still prepare you to carry someone else through it. Do not skip it.
Michael placed a picture of the treasury in this envelope, not a metaphor, a literal image of what exists on behalf of every faithful woman who has sown into the lives of others and the kingdom of God without receiving a return in this world yet. This is yours. What is in this image belongs to you. Look at it. Your harvest is not late. It is simply arriving today.
There is something I have been asked to convey in this letter that I want to deliver with the full care it deserves, because I believe it will touch a place in you that few things ever reach. It concerns the people who are not in the room with you right now, the ones who are gone, the ones whose earthly journey concluded before this moment arrived, the ones you still miss. They know about today. In the celestial understanding of time, the prayers of those who have moved beyond the physical world do not end with their bodies. The love that drove those prayers does not dissolve when the body that housed it finishes its tenure in the physical realm. And so, the grandmother who prayed for you while she was alive, the mother or aunt or neighbor whose faith over your life was one of the quiet certainties of your childhood, their prayers did not stop. They are part of the accumulated intercession that created the conditions for this exact transmission to reach you. I want you to think for a moment about the specific women in your history who prayed for you, who spoke blessings over you when you were too young to know what blessings were, who told you that you were special, that you were going to do something meaningful, that God had a plan for your life in the simple and unhesitating way that people with genuine faith speak about things they consider settled. Those women are, in the celestial record, among the architects of today. Their investment in you was not canceled by their transition from this world to the next. It was transferred. It became part of the foundation of the covenant being honored today. And their response to this moment, if you could hear it, would be the sound of a satisfaction so complete that it requires no further words. You are not alone in this moment. You are accompanied by every prayer ever spoken over you and every love ever extended toward you from the people whose lives intersected with yours and left something true and good behind. All of that is present with you today. All of it is participating in what today initiates. And all of it will be present with you as you move through the season that begins from this point forward. There is something specific I am authorized to say to the women watching this who lost someone dear in a season of unresolved grief, someone whose going left words unspoken and questions unanswered. I am authorized to tell you that what was left unfinished is not permanently unfinished in the larger understanding of time. There is a reconciliation available in the spiritual reality that governs human connections, and today, that reconciliation is being extended as part of the larger restoration. You do not need to carry the unfinished grief as though it were the final word. The final word has not yet been spoken. Receive that if you need it. It was placed in this letter specifically for you.
Someone specific came to your mind just now. Someone who is no longer here. This card was written for the connection between you and that person. Read it and let it be true.
You are in the final stretch of this letter, 3/4 of the way through. And I want to say something directly before I give you what is in this section. Most digital letters you receive today will have lost you by now, not because they are bad, because they do not go deep enough to reach the place where the real change happens. They stay on the surface. They speak to your circumstances. They rarely touch the operating system underneath your circumstances, the invisible internal language from which everything else in your life flows. What I am about to give you in this section is the deepest thing in this entire letter. Stay. Because what follows is the distinction that will outlast today by decades if you receive it fully. There are two fundamentally different languages available to every human being. Not different spoken languages, but two different internal languages, two different operating systems from which a person can experience and interpret and navigate existence. I am going to call them the language of daughters and the language of orphans. The language of orphans is built on a foundational assumption, usually unconscious, that you are fundamentally alone in your circumstances, that resources are limited to what you can see and generate yourself, that care must be earned through performance and maintained through continued usefulness, that love is conditional, never fully trusted, never fully received, that the future is threatening and must be approached defensively. Most people who speak this language are not aware they are speaking it. They have inhabited it so long that it feels like a description of reality rather than a response to it. but it is a response. And it generates a particular quality of life characterized by chronic low-level anxiety, the exhausting maintenance of a self-image that feels permanently at risk, and the loneliness of someone whose inner architecture has no room designed for receiving. The language of daughters proceeds from an opposite assumption: that you belong to someone who is neither indifferent to your welfare nor limited in addressing your needs. That care is not earned through performance, because your place at the table is not contingent on your performance. That love can be fully received because its source does not withdraw based on your failures. That the future is the territory where the promises made over your life will be fulfilled, and can therefore be entered with the expectant confidence of someone who knows exactly whose daughter she is. This language produces a categorically different quality of life, not a life without difficulty, but a life in which difficulty is navigated from a settled interior foundation that does not depend on circumstances for its stability. Today, I am making a formal declaration on behalf of the Celestial Council that issued your file this morning. The language you are authorized to speak from the moment of your birth is the language of daughters. Whatever conditions of your life or history assigned you the orphan's language, whatever experiences trained you to expect less than the full inheritance of a child who belongs to the most abundant household in existence. Those conditions and those experiences do not have the final authority over which language you speak. The final authority rests with the one who made you a daughter before any of those experiences had the chance to tell you otherwise. From this moment, you speak the language of daughters. From this moment, you receive fully, without the orphan's suspicion that what is offered will be taken back. From this moment, you inhabit your table, rather than observing it from outside the window. This is the most radical transformation that today's decree authorizes, and it changes everything downstream from it.
This is the table the letter was just describing, the one set for you, the chair that is pulled out. Look carefully. That is your place. That seat was not pulled out for someone else. It has your name on it, and today, the letter is formally inviting you to sit down. Stop standing outside the window. Sit down.
I have spoken today of your identity, of your history, of your inheritance, and of the language that is now being restored to you. Now I want to speak specifically of what is opening, because today's decree does not simply address your inner world. It opens doors in the outer. 1. 3 specific doors are being opened simultaneously in your life as this letter is received. I want to name them clearly, so that when you encounter the evidence of their opening in the coming days and weeks, you will recognize it for what it is, rather than attributing it to coincidence or allowing it to pass unnoticed. The first door is the door of unexpected connection. Someone is going to enter your life or re-enter it in a significantly different capacity in the near term. This connection will carry an immediacy of recognition, a sense of encountering someone whose arrival was anticipated somewhere beneath your conscious awareness before you ever met them. They will function as a convergence point, someone whose presence brings together threads that have been developing separately for years and suddenly reveals how they were always meant to be woven together. The one I'm speaking of will make themselves known by the specific quality of recognition they carry. The second door is the door of creative expression. There is something inside you that has been waiting to come out. A voice, a vision, a creative capacity that has been suppressed or underdeveloped, or simply never given the conditions in which it could breathe. This door opening does not mean that you will become a famous artist or a celebrated public figure, though those outcomes are not outside the range of what heaven authorizes for those it assigns them to. What it means is that the specific form of expression that is uniquely yours, the one that when you engage with it produces that rare quality of flow where effort feels effortless and time loses its ordinary weight. That form of expression will find both the internal freedom and the external opportunity to move from the margins of your life to its center. Watch for the invitation. It will not be announced with fanfare. It will arrive as a quiet but persistent prompting that keeps returning even after you dismiss it. The third door is the door of healing legacy. This is the door I want to spend a moment with, because it is the one that will produce the most profound and lasting transformation in your experience. It is the door through which the patterns of pain that have been passed down through your family line, patterns you received without choosing them and have carried without fully understanding their origin, will be interrupted permanently. Today marks the point at which the generational current that has been flowing in a particular direction through your lineage is redirected. The anxiety your mother carried, and her mother before her, the patterns of relationship that have produced the same quality of wound across multiple generations, the financial cycles that have kept a kind of lack or instability embedded in the story of your family, regardless of the efforts of individual members. Today, a new current is established, not because the past is erased, but because a new pattern is seeded that is stronger than the inherited one, and that new pattern will express itself through you into the lives of those who come after you with a force that outlasts your own lifetime. 3 doors. Open. Today. There are only 2 sections left in this letter. The next one carries the commission that came with what was just opened for you. And the one after that is the final decree spoken directly over your life. Do not stop before the decree. It was written for you to hear in its entirety. Stay through to the end.
3 doors. These are not metaphors. They are events that are already in motion in your life. This card names what just opened. Watch for it this week. Watch for it this month. Write down in the comments which door you feel stirring first.
Beloved, I want to speak now about the other side of today's decree, because a decree of restoration is inseparable from a commission of responsibility, and I would be doing you a disservice if I presented only the receiving half of this equation without speaking also to the giving half. What you are receiving today is not intended to end with you. I do not mean that in the abstract inspirational sense of suggesting that happy people make the world better. I mean it in the specific and operational sense of a person who is assigned a purpose that is inherently relational, inherently outward-facing, inherently connected to the well-being of others whose lives will intersect with hers in the season ahead. The peace you are receiving today is meant to be the peace that a person in crisis senses in you when they enter your presence, not because you will announce it or perform it, but because a piece of this quality in a person changes the atmosphere of every room they enter. And the people who most desperately need to encounter that atmosphere will be drawn to you in the coming season with a frequency that you will recognize as purposeful rather than coincidental. The financial restoration coming toward you is meant to include the capacity to be generous in ways you previously could not access. Not generous at the expense of your own stability or well-being, but generously from overflow, from surplus, in the way that a river that is full gives to the land around it, simply by being full, not through effort, but through natural abundance. There are specific people and specific works that heaven intends to fund through your prosperity. And as you receive the details of those connections, you will know them immediately, because they will carry the signature of something that resonates with the purpose you have always known yourself to carry. The wisdom you accumulated through your suffering is meant to be spoken, not hoarded, offered in whatever form is authentic to who you are. Through conversations with the women in your life who are navigating the terrain you have already crossed, through whatever creative form the second door leads you toward, through the simple willingness to tell your true story without the diminishment of false modesty. You were brought through everything you endured to become a crossing point for others. That is the commission that accompanies today's decree. Receive everything that was decreed, then give from what you receive with the generosity of someone who knows. The source is inexhaustible.
This image is the commission made visible. 2 women. One has already been through what the other is just entering. Look at the older woman's hands. Look at how she holds the younger ones. That is what you are being called to do with everything this letter has released into your life. You are not restored to keep it to yourself. You are restored so that this could happen. Who in your life needs to receive this?
I am nearing the end of this letter, and I want to speak to one final and essential element of what today's transmission inaugurates, because it concerns not just this moment, but the sustained relationship between heaven and your daily life that this moment is intended to initiate. The letter you received today was not sent as a single, standalone event. It is the opening of a channel, a re-establishment of a frequency of communication that was always available to you, but that the noise of your circumstances, your doubts, and the accumulated weight of your waiting had made difficult to receive with clarity. And like any channel of communication, it requires intentional maintenance to remain clear. The maintenance is not complicated. It does not require hours of spiritual performance or religious obligation. It requires the simple choice, made consistently, to return to the source, to come back, to place yourself regularly and deliberately in the space where this frequency is transmitted, to read these letters when they arrive, to sit in the community that is gathering around this channel, and allow the testimony of other women who are receiving, responding, and experiencing the visible manifestations of the decrees that were issued over their lives, to reinforce your own faith during the inevitable moments when doubt attempts to reclaim the territory it lost today. Those moments of doubt will come, not because what was decreed today is uncertain, but because the opposition does not simply accept the verdict without attempting to appeal it in the court of your own mind. The appeals will take the form of circumstances that seem to contradict the decree, of days when the peace feels distant. When those moments arrive, the single most powerful thing you can do is return. Return to this frequency. Return to the community of women holding the same decree over their own lives. Return to the testimony of what occurred today, when heaven spoke your name and sent a letter designated for you. The women who sustain what today initiates are the ones who build the practice of return into the structure of their lives, not out of spiritual obligation, but out of the practical understanding that maintaining a connection requires being present to it. The next letter will arrive, and the one after that, and the one after that, each one finding you ready and receptive. If you have chosen not to let the noise of a world that is very good at making the significant feel distant pull you away from what today open, your community is here. Your letters will keep coming, and the cumulative effect of receiving them over weeks and months and years, of allowing each transmission to build upon what the previous ones established, of walking in the company of women who are choosing to inhabit the language of daughters and the fullness of their inheritance. That cumulative effect is what transforms a single extraordinary moment into an extraordinary life. This is the covenant of return. Keep it.
This is the last card before the final decree. Michael wrote one instruction for what comes after today, one simple thing. Read it and decide right now if you will do it.
Beloved, I want to close by bringing everything spoken today into a single, final declaration, a decree that consolidates all that was transmitted and speaks it over you as one unified, indissoluble commitment from the realm that commissioned this communication. You are a daughter, not an orphan. You speak the language of belonging, not the language of lack. You are the inheritor of a covenant, not established by your merit and not revocable by your failure. You are the product of an ancient lineage of faithful women whose prayers created the ground you stand on today, and whose love has not ceased to operate on your behalf. Your suffering was not random and was not punishment. It was mapped to a purpose that you are now qualified to inhabit because of, not in spite of, what you endured. The court case conducted on your behalf has concluded in the only verdict it was ever going to reach. The file with your name on it has been opened and the instructions for your restoration have been issued. Your peace is coming. Your community is coming. Your financial reversal is coming. Your healing of body, of lineage, of the specific unfinished grief you carry is coming. 3 doors are open before you. One of unexpected connection, one of creative expression, one of healing legacy. Walk through them with the unhurried confidence of a woman who knows that what waits on the other side was prepared for her before the door existed. Speak the language of your true name over your own life today, out loud, with conviction, not the name your pain gave you. the name that was inscribed in the celestial registers before you drew your first breath. Say it now, even if you do not yet know all of its syllables. Say, I am known, I am chosen, I am restored, I receive what today was sent to bring me, and I will return. Write 777 in the comments below. Not as a symbol of superstition, not as a formula, but as a timestamp, as the mark of a woman who was present when this letter was read on this day, and who said yes to everything it contained. Let that 777 be the notation in the digital record of the day your file was opened, the day the verdict was declared, the day the season of your waiting gave way to the season of your harvest. And then, share this video with one woman in your life who has been in the desert long enough, who has been waiting long enough, who needs, more than she needs, any practical advice or any human encouragement, to know that heaven has not forgotten her name and has not stopped working on her behalf. Your share of this letter is not a social media action. It is an act of intercession. It is you stepping into the role of the sent one that was always yours to inhabit, and using what you receive today to open the same door for someone else. I am Michael, and I speak this over you with the full authority of the commission I received in the hall where your name was spoken today. You are not what the silence told you. You are not what the delay suggested. You are not what the loss implied. You are exactly who heaven said you were before any of those things happened. And today, finally, irrevocably, joyfully, you are beginning to become what you always were. Go, receive, return, give. The next letter is already being written.
Michael saved this one for last. He wanted this to be the final image you carry with you after this letter is finished. Not a concept, not a symbol, a face, his face, looking directly at you, with the authority of everything that was just spoken. He is not finished with you. This letter was the opening of something, not the conclusion of it. Look at his face. Look at what he is sending forward toward you with that hand. That is not a farewell gesture. That is a sending gesture. He is sending you into something. And leave your 777 in the comments below. Right now, before you do anything else. At the beginning of this video, I said that I knew you had probably already received 2 or 3 divine messages today before you found this one. And I asked you to trust that what was inside this envelope was different. I hope by now you know that it was. If you are still here, if you watched every single minute of this, I want you to understand something. That is not a small thing. Most people do not stay. Most people skim. Most people treat these letters the way they treat everything else that arrives in their feed. They glance at it, feel a small warmth, and keep scrolling. You did not do that. And the fact that you did not do that is itself one of the signs the letter named. You stayed because something in you recognized that what was being spoken was true. Not comfortable, not convenient, but true. That recognition is the beginning of everything the letter described. Leave 777 in the comments if today touched something real in you, not as a ritual, as a record, as the moment you said yes to what was offered today. And if you know a woman who has been in the desert long enough, a woman who has been watching these letters and feeling something stir, but not yet being able to fully receive it, Send this one to her. She does not need encouragement. She needs a letter that was written before she found it. And this one was already written for her too. Today was not the end. It was the opening. What happens next depends entirely on what you do with what you just received.